If you're thinking about moving and you want to learn about what everyday life is going to be like in your new town, this is the place for you. On Open House, we sit down with local, top producing real estate agents to help you find the best places to live in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So if you don't want buyer's remorse and you want to find your dream town, we are here for you. So go ahead and book a free call with us and we'll help guide you to the area that is right for you. Now, let's jump in and learn about your new home. Welcome to Reston, Virginia with Open House. Today, I am talking with Micki Moravitz, a Reston resident and an expert in all things Northern Virginia. So she is knowledgeable in the schools, the neighborhoods, the homes nearby, really everything that you would want to know about Reston. So with that, thank you, Micki, for being on the show. And would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself? How long have you been in real estate and what kind of drives you as an agent?
Yes, so I have been in real estate. Actually, I first got licensed back in 1987. So I've been in this business quite a long time through the ups and downs. What drives me is I love helping people make those home decisions, make those transitions and helping them through what is generally a huge move for many. Of course, when they're buying real estate, they're generally dealing with one of the greatest financial investments they own. And I think it's really important that they have very personalized services and care moving them through that process.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself and just giving us a little sense for what kind of drives you and motivates you in the business. And you're definitely just a wonderful person to talk to. So I'm excited to get into Reston and talk a little bit about the history, the economics, the schools. We're going to go through the restaurants and bars, some events that are nearby, and of course, the real estate specific questions that folks from out of state especially want to know before making a move here.
Okay.
So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the history of Reston. I think Reston's got some interesting facts in its backstory. So if you wouldn't mind diving into that, let's
definitely. So Reston is a very unique and interesting community. So Reston was actually established back in 1964. And it is named after the person who established it. His name was Robert E. Simon. So Reston is spelled R-E-S, and then he kind of shortened town. So it was Reston Town is kind of how people thought of it. So Mr. Simon came down from New York. His family had actually owned Carnegie Hall in New York. And so he sold that and bought this basically 7,400 acres, which at the time was pretty much out in the boonies, out in nowhere. And he wanted to establish a planned community. Now, by the way, this was the first planned community in the country.
Wow.
Notice also it was in early 60s, all right? And
Sure.
in Virginia, a southern state, and he wanted an inclusive community that involved inclusive for ethnicity, inclusive for all ranges of income,
Sure.
economic levels, and so forth. And he wanted it to be a beautiful place for all to enjoy. And he had certain principles on that. And so here we are today enjoying that, concept. And Reston is very unique because of those foundational course that he put into his development.
Sure. Yeah. And to your point, it's still very diverse today, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you'll see that in a lot of the things I talk about. It's diverse we have so many different variety of housing, of entertainment, of places, it's just got everything anybody might want. And variations of it all.
right.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into the schools a little bit more in a little bit. But I remember you mentioning that your daughter had an interesting experience at her graduation. What was that?
So when my oldest daughter was graduating, and that was back in 2011, and I was doing the all-night grad party, organizing that's like a full-time job. But anyway, so the principal at the time I was talking with the sub-school principal, and she had to explain to me that, listen, as you go about this, you need to realize that there are 52 first languages in our class. Okay. So, and the class was just over 500 and some, I don't remember, 550 or something, and 52 first languages. And so, how often do you get that? So that's, and so, and that continues. I mean, Reston has a lot of diversity. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Now let's talk a little bit about just the culture of the city itself, in respect to it being kind of like a rural area, suburban, city-like, the kind of population density. What's that like?
Okay, so first of all, Reston never became a town so far. It's an area. Okay.
Okay.
There are people that want to make it a town, but it's not a town yet. All right. And because of the different locations and the times that the various places of it were developed and built out, there's a lot. Reston comprises all of the above. You've got the downtown urban area, which is in the Reston Town Center, and I'm doing this because the Reston Transit area basically hugs the Silver Line around the metro. Okay, so that is where we're getting higher density development. A lot of your businesses, condos, high rises, around the town center and so forth. So much more of an urban feel, high walkability, all of that, right? And then on both sides of the toll road, you have North Reston, South Reston, divided by the toll road. Okay, and in those areas, like for instance, South Reston was developed sooner than more the north, right? And heavily treed, big wooded lots. You are in suburbia, okay? And then North Reston is kind of a mix because it's again bigger lots, different homes that way, less density, right, in both north and south. But north is generally smaller lots, not quite in the woods as much. So it's got a different feel to it.
Got it. All right, that makes a lot of sense. So when you think about where people tend to work, is that going to be primarily in the kind of the more urban area? And if so, what are some of the kind of companies that you'll see there? I know a lot of folks who are watching these videos are oftentimes doing that because they've got a new job close to the area, and so they want to, of course, live somewhere close to where they work. So if you can dive into that, that'd be awesome.
Yes. So one of Robert Simon's, concepts was he wanted people to live, work, and play here in Reston. Okay. And grow old. But he would say live, work, and play. Reston Transit area is where the businesses are primarily focused. And we have a lot of big businesses there. We have Google, we have Microsoft, we have Oracle, we have, all different types of, well, of course, you've got all the retail as well, right? And so forth. So you've got a number of the bigger businesses. I'm thinking, okay, Oracle, Leidos, Comcast, right? A lot of big names.
Yeah, those are huge names.
And we also have some government facilities near the transit or in the transit area as well.
Gotcha. Okay. That's awesome. And let's say I don't work for one of those bigger tech companies or one of the big contracting companies in the area, but let's say I'm I'm working on Capitol Hill, right? Firstly, what's kind of the approximate commute time from Reston to maybe inner DC, and what are some of the options as it relates to transportation as well?
Okay, so yes, there are actually between DC and Reston, there's also another large hub, and that's Tyson's Corner. All right. So if you're working downtown, obviously the Silver Line Metro would be a great option for you. depending on time, well, with Metro, it's about 35, 45 minutes. Okay. If you're driving, of course, there are commuter lanes and so forth. So if you have multiple people in the car, there are commuter lanes to make your commute easier and faster, right? During rush hour. So if you're driving, it can be anywhere from 30 minutes to actually an hour or so to get downtown, right?
Okay.
And then Tyson's Corner is only about 15 minutes from here. And Tyson's is a large hub of even more businesses. A lot of the big consulting houses are in Tyson's Corner area. Tyson's also has the big malls, right? And so forth. Actually, a couple of them, right? So Tyson's is a big, another big employment hub for people living in Reston.
Okay, great. That's a really nice insight to have. I think a lot of times people kind of get focused on either DC itself or maybe the town itself, but sometimes it's helpful to know that there are some major economic centers sometimes between the two, like the case of Tyson's Corner. Right. So let's say I have maybe a couple kids that are in elementary, middle, high school, that kind of thing. I know that there's probably tons of different schools in the area, but if you can give me a little overview of some of the public schools, whether there be any magnet schools or charter schools, vocational specialty schools, if we can go into that and then also into the different private schools that are there, that would be great too.
Right. Public schools are within the Fairfax County public school system, and which is a highly recognized school system. All right. And we have, I think there's 8 elementary schools in Reston, right, serving Reston, 2 high schools serving the different parts of Reston. The South Lakes High School serves most of Reston, okay? Herndon High School takes on some of the folks in North Reston section. And then there are the Herndon Middle School and Langston Hughes Middle School. Now, Langston Hughes and South Lakes are like on a campus together. So they're right next to each other in South Reston. And now the elementary schools, there's a magnet school for the arts and sciences. That's Hunter's Woods magnet for the arts and sciences. There are language immersion programs in some of the different schools. So although right outside of Herndon, there's a Japanese immersion in Fox Mill, there's Spanish immersion in Lake Ann. And so these different programs that you can, as a parent, elect to enroll your children in, all right? Even if you're not in that school district.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you had mentioned before that there were 52 languages being spoken in high school. It just makes sense that you would have at least a handful of schools that are going to have some immersion courses there.
Absolutely. And then, the high schools are like South Lakes High School has the International Baccalaureate program, has an amazing culinary arts program, amazing music programs and arts programs. And Herndon has, and actually South Lakes both have big theater programs, right? Okay. So there's a lot going on in those schools.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. And then for the private schools, so we have a couple right here in Reston, and then a couple just right outside of Reston that people might be interested in. So we have, for instance, Naismith and Edlin. Edlin is actually in Reston. Naismith is right outside in Herndon for the advanced academics and so forth, students. There's a new all-girls 6th through 12th. Actually school, which is again right outside of Reston. It's in Vienna, called Oak Crest. And then we have a number of Montessori schools throughout that are options for kids and so forth.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's super important because obviously Reston is a place where there's a lot of successful people. There's a lot of folks who are very, very productive and who value education for themselves. Yeah. And so therefore, those folks especially are going to be very interested in the kind of education that their kids are getting. And so absolutely. I think that having a huge diversity of options for schools, whether that be private or public, I think is really, really important to a lot of folks. So that's really good to hear.
Mhm.
Um, so let's say when we're not working and we're not going to school, we want to have, of course, a good time. What are some of the highlight places to go to have a good time, either on the weekends or in the evenings?
A lot of places.
Let's
And
start with maybe the restaurants and bars. How about that? Just
and they have different feels. So for instance, I mentioned Reston Town Center, right? And it's a vibrant town center. It's a very successful model for what other communities are trying to develop as town centers. So Reston Town Center has your more of the upper end type of vibe to it. And it has anywhere from, the burger place, though, that you can walk up and get a burger at the counter, or you can go to the Morton Steakhouse, right? And then the place that's always busy is Jackson's. Jackson's is on this corner. It has an outside spot and this kind of thing. And, it's kind of in the center of the area and so forth. So you've got those types of places at Town Center. And of course, there's people walking and doing, and the town center will have different entertainment things.
Actually, I believe that there are some lakes nearby or within Reston as well. Could you tell me a little bit about some of the restaurant
Yes,
options that you have around the lake?
absolutely. So another another hub of entertainment is Lake Ann area. Now, Lake Ann it's called Lake Ann Village. It's the historic district of Reston.
Okay.
And it has an international feel to it. It's got this round kind of design on the lake. And so that's where people will either bring their own platoons or whatever, boats or kayaks or whatever. And they rent them as well in the summer. But Lake Ann has a number of restaurants right on the lake. So one of the locally owned is Calypso's right there, has that outdoor area that everybody enjoys. There's Lake Ann Brew House right on Lake Ann. There's a Thai restaurant. There's a coffee shop that at night is also a wine place. So there are all these different restaurants and shops. Also, Lake Ann has like the best and biggest farmers market. That is the place to be on Saturday mornings. And then on the south side of Reston, we've got another on Lake Audubon. And so right there is another community, shopping center with restaurants right there on the lake.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like, well, of course, I know for a fact that Reston has just an immense variety of options, and some, as you mentioned before, some really high-end options as well. When we're thinking about schools, you had mentioned that they have a really great fine arts program, and oftentimes those types of schools are associated with the professional version of those. Are there any theaters or opera houses or places where people can view the fine arts?
So actually, we have a very vibrant. It's called the GRACE, the Greater Reston Arts Council, something. It's called GRACE. So GRACE is very active in the community, and there's a lot of public art throughout Reston as well. But in addition, there are some local theaters. So Reston Community Center there are two locations of the community center. One is at the Hunter's Woods, that's the original. And that community center has a wonderful, very quaint theater. So, and they have some great productions in the local productions in that theater. They're anywhere from, concerts to shows, right? In Reston Community Center. Reston Community Center also has another location right at Lake Ann. But the theater, right, is in the Hunter's Woods area. And then there's also right outside there's a Next Stop Theater, which is a local theater right in Herndon, so just outside of Reston, that a lot of people enjoy. So yes.
That's great. Yeah, my daughter's taking ballet classes, and I can't wait for they don't allow us to actually see the students while they're practicing, because
Oh,
parents and all that. But I'm really looking forward to her first recital. So yeah, as a parent who enjoys that, I think a lot of folks would enjoy that as well.
oh yeah.
Let's say we don't have children. We've got dogs and horses and things of that nature. We're more of a pet lover and a nature lover as well. What are some of the different parks that are in and around the area? Of course, we spoke about the two lakes that are nearby.
Exactly.
Um,
Hmm.
could you tell me a little bit more about that?
So, okay, so actually I only mentioned two, but there are actually four lakes. All right.
Okay.
So that's number one. Number two, one of the things that I should mention is that Reston Association, it actually covers most of the homes that have a Reston address. They do
Mhm.
not cover like in the transit area, and there's areas just a couple outside of Reston Association. Now, Reston Association is the biggest provider of the recreation facilities. 55 gorgeous miles of trails, all right? And I'm telling you, they are gorgeous. About 5-6 feet wide, paved, actually plowed in the winter because everybody
Wow,
uses
that's
them
great.
all the time. And there's so much nature. There are a lot of birders that enjoy those trails and so forth. But that's a great place for dogs, right? Obviously, people
Sure.
walking and so forth. There are some horse trails. So the south side of Reston, I live in the Hunter's Woods area. And,
Mhm.
we're on, Bugle Lane, Trotter Lane, Steeplechase Drive, right? There was a real horsey, there used to be a horse barn right behind us and another one. So, and there are still some horse trails right through here. So for those that have them, they can be close by if somebody's interested. And then, again, the Reston Association has 15 pools. Some of them are just gorgeous, Olympic size, almost resort-like pools. So now that's to be a member, but you don't have to be a member to enjoy the lakes and the trails and things like that, and the parks.
Sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think of all the places that are around DC, I think you mentioned before that Reston is like the number one place for trails. If you're somebody who likes to hike or
Oh,
someone who likes to walk and take runs,
yep.
that's the place to be.
That I consider it a differentiator. Somebody's going to look when they come in the area, they're going to look around to the different communities. All right. And they all have a lot of the same, and they can get to town center from Herndon or whatever, right? But
Sure.
they can't walk down the street and get on a trail like ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really makes a community, really marks the culture and kind of the overall feel of a community, I think, is oftentimes the events, right? Those things that happen, once a year or once every couple of years. What are some of the highlight events that are happening in Reston?
Yes. Okay. So we have generally the high schools, of course, from real local. You've got the local high school, homecoming parade that goes through all the streets and so forth. Then you got the town center Macy's style Thanksgiving. The day after Thanksgiving, we have a Macy's style parade through town center with all the, the local, of course, Santa, right? But
Sure,
also,
yeah.
the high schools and all the different groups participate. That's a big local event that a lot of people go to.
Sure.
The Reston Town Center hosts one of the biggest fine arts festivals that in the area. So that's something that a lot of people enjoy. And then they also do various runs, for different fundraisers and that kind of thing. And, usually an Oktoberfest here and there, right? And so the different village centers will also sometimes sponsor some of those things. Also, during the summer, we have outdoor free entertainment everywhere. Lake Ann does theirs on Thursdays and Sundays, and the town centers usually also Saturdays and that kind of thing. So you can Herndon is Fridays, so you can find free entertainment, especially during the summer, just about any day of the week.
Sure. Well, that's wonderful. Well, I think you've given us a really, really good overview of some of the different things that you can do to just have a great time with yourself, with your family, with your pets. Let's dive into the real estate market questions
Mhm.
that, again, lots of folks have
Yes.
when they're thinking about moving to the area. And
Mhm.
just to kind of get things started, when you think about the different types of communities that, of course, Reston itself is a planned community. With that being said, what are some of the different types of homes that are there? Do you have the full gamut of single family to townhome to condos, or is it predominantly one style or the other?
So not only do we have the full gamut, we have a range in every one of those options, right? So I thought it was interesting. Over the last year, I went for, okay, what was the lowest price sale in Reston? The lowest price sale in Reston was 139,000. It was a one bedroom, one bath in a senior community. It's not in, it's a an over 55. It's not, assisted or anything, but it's a condo that was built for seniors.
Got
Okay.
it. Okay.
Um, all the way up to our highest price sale in the last year, which was a $2.5 million condo also.
Really?
And it was in the town center. Okay. So it was
That's
a luxury condo. And so we had lowest condo, highest condo, and those were our lowest and highest sales. Now,
that's funny.
in the middle, we have all types. We have, of course, condos, townhouses, single family homes. We have contemporaries, we have colonials. On the high end of the sales, for instance, the highest sales were, in the 1.9, 2.0 were homes, actually contemporary homes on a lake. Okay.
Mhm.
Different lakes, but so just to give you an idea. And then generally in the, anywhere from 1 to 1.8, whatever, are your more stately colonials,
Okay.
right? Then you've got townhouses and everything in the middle. You can get a 2-level townhouse for, you might be in the fours, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, high threes or 400s, or up to over $1 million home for an elevator townhouse right near town center, right? So
Sure.
we like I said, the diversity is in every aspect of Reston. It's in the options of where to go. It's in the options of types of homes. It's in the price range. We've got everything. Yeah.
Sure. So if you were to say or to name like maybe three neighborhoods that you personally think are distinctive in certain respects, or maybe are pretty sought after, uh, what three neighborhoods might you point to and why?
Well, I would not just want to show people three because I think there are so many. Okay.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but so the historic area of Lake Anne, it's super quaint, a lot of more contemporary homes, everywhere from condos to single families.
Hmm.
So when I say older, they were built in generally the 60s, okay, maybe 70s.
Hmm.
um, and they're just cool. they
Sure.
they were built with, you've got the brick walls inside, you've got the hardwood floors, open spaces, lots of floor to ceiling doors and windows, you know um, closet space not so great, because back then, right? But
It's always a
just
trade-off.
cool areas and also such walkability. All
Mm.
right, so walkable to that Lake Anne, and to the farmers market on Saturday. It's just very walkable. Also
Okay.
walkable to town center, right? Now then you've got north section of Reston. You've got some beautiful stately colonial homes in lovely communities, and they've got, again, they're all connected through the pathways. You can go north to south Reston on those pathways, right? So it's just a very different feel. You've got both contemporaries and colonials up there.
Okay.
And then South Reston, you've got that woodsy feeling, and more privacy. Everybody's kind of tucked in the trees, and yet you've got the paths and everything that you're seeing everybody walking around.
Awesome. Okay, sounds great. So it sounds like some of the places that are of interest are certainly the neighborhoods around the lakes, certainly North Reston, if you're looking at some stately estates.
Oh yeah.
South Reston. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got two questions to kind of wrap things up. The first question is just, in the years that you've been in Reston, of course, you've seen it develop in different ways over the course of time. And I'm sure there were reasons for why you initially came to Reston. There are probably different reasons for why you're staying there now. So if you could just tell me a little bit about what initially brought you to Reston and what has kept you in Reston now.
So what initially brought me to Reston was I was buying my first home. And, when you're looking around, and I was living in McLean. I grew up in McLean, which is a lot more expensive, right? It's closer into DC. So I looked at Reston as an option and found a lot out here to do. Now, granted, yes, it was not nearly as, you got lost in Reston a lot. Everything was hidden by trees back then. But that's what brought me here, because it wasn't too far out, but I could get my first home. And what keeps me here. So I mentioned that Reston has the pools. I didn't talk about the tennis courts, the two golf courses and things like that, right? What keeps me here is I've got, I never have, I love DC, but I never have to go to DC. I've got everything right here. I've got shopping, I've got entertainment, I've got, free entertainment, or I can go to shows or whatever. I've got everything right here. And I just, it's a beautiful place to be. It's a beautiful area.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think that, and that's super true. There's lots of places out there where, they have some things, but not everything. And sometimes you're commuting more, and so you're going to be staying there for proximity to DC or proximity to other places. But that Reston, as designed, right?
Exactly, it's as designed. Right.
Yep. Everything is right there. Last question for you, and that's basically for, again, those folks that are thinking about moving to Reston from out of the area. Of course, just like any other place, there are certain, caveats, certain things that are distinctive about it. There may be things that you would know from all the transactions that you have done in the area that others might not be able to know or might not think to ask when they're doing research online. So with all that being said, what might be, one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's thinking about moving to the area?
I would say probably the biggest piece would be, don't make a fast judgment on the area based on one or two things you see.
Okay.
Because it has so many different varieties and not far away. The other thing, and of course this is right now with low inventory, even though it's not on the market, we might know that something might come available that they might be interested in, but they won't see it online right now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So there are communities that you're not going to know about because it's not on the market right now, but you should be aware of, right?
Sure.
And there are some idiosyncrasies regarding some of the different areas. All right. So for instance, that old section of Reston does have a different type of cooling system. So some of them are connected right around Lake Anne. They used a different type of cooling systems and so forth back at that development. And so there are some things that you might want to know in certain areas. all right, that would not be applicable to other areas. Overall, I just think that if you're going to come to Northern Virginia and you're going to be working anywhere around the DC area, I think you ought to look at Reston. All right. I think it's a great place to live. It's got a lot to it. And there's just something for everybody.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I would dovetail that with saying that if you're thinking about moving to Reston, I think you ought to get to know Micki.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as you had said, there's oftentimes lots of deals that are coming up. Oftentimes, agents that have a deal coming up that they can't necessarily put in coming soon, or maybe they don't have everything squared away to put it into coming soon or put it on the market. And so those deals are on their way to getting to the market, but those are oftentimes opportunities where you can get into a home with a lot less competition from some of the for some of the connections that someone who's been in the industry for a long time is going to have, like you have. And in a competitive market, those are oftentimes the difference between getting the home that you're really looking to get, getting into the neighborhood that you really want to get, and maybe not. So that's something that's really helpful.
Well, and also if somebody's coming into the area and they have a vision of something they have in mind, but they're not seeing it, it doesn't mean we don't have it. It just means they're not seeing it right now, right? And so I don't want them to make the assumption that we didn't have it. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, again, if you're looking to live in Reston, if you're thinking about moving to the Northern Virginia area, definitely give us a text, give us a call, send us an email, check out our contact details in the description below. And if you're thinking about moving to Reston, you definitely want to get hooked up with Micki, because she's going to give you a lot of just great advice, great expertise. She obviously, knows the area like nobody else, and she's going to be able to steer you in the right direction. So with that, thank you, Micki, for being on the show, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan.